Gospel Reflections for the 23rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, Year C, 7th of September 2025. The Gospel text is from Luke chapter 14 verses 25 to 33. The main focus is this: the following are the conditions to follow Christ: placing his values above everything else, including one's family ties and life itself; acquiring an attitude of self-sacrifice and detachment from worldly possessions. In brief, the main theme of today's gospel text is this: the conditions and cost of Christian discipleship. Today, Jesus reminds us that Christian discipleship is not a low-cost and low-risk product. It does not attract disciples by offering them better features and more comforts at lower cost as businessmen or business companies do. He makes them fully clear of the high cost of the decision they have to make to follow him. And today's gospel is a bitter pill to those who live their Christian faith half-heartedly or keep it up just for social identity. As per today's gospel text, Jesus tells the large crowds that were traveling with him on the road to Jerusalem three necessary conditions to follow him. Number one, hating one's family members and even life itself, in chapter 14 verse 26. Number two, carrying the cross and following him, in verse 27. And number three, renouncing all possessions, in verse 33. He spells out in clear terms the conditions for Christian discipleship. It involves absolute allegiance and loyalty to him over one's own family members, over one's own self-interest and possessions. First condition laid by Jesus, that is, to hate one's own family members and life itself, does not mean an intense dislike or revulsion towards our family members as we understand the word hate in our languages, but not so in Semitic languages spoken by Jesus. It is a typical example of the habit of exaggerating a point in Semitic languages in order to emphasize it. It refers to the primary allegiance or a higher preference which disciples must give to Jesus over their own families or over their own life, especially when his gospel values are violated or neglected by them. Jesus makes it clear that those who follow him radically may occasionally have to enter into conflicts with their own family members who follow him, not radically but only superficially or for social identity, and have no regard for his values. For instance, suppose a husband pressurizes his pregnant wife to undergo an abortion or abort a female fetus in societies where girl child is not preferred. After a sex determination test conducted with the advice of her husband against her wish, she has to decide between a higher loyalty to Jesus or her husband, between her conscience that prompts her to uphold the dignity and sacredness of life or obey her husband. Jesus wants that his disciples place their loyalty to him above their family loyalties, or to love their families less than him when it comes to choosing certain principles or values, not otherwise. This can happen not only in families but also in religious communities and in priesthood too. Since religious life is only a radical way of following the Lord, a conflict of interests, priorities and choices can arise in religious communities between those who want to live religious life really radically and those who want to dilute this radicalism to a great extent. It is no wonder sometimes the former ones feel out of place in their own religious communities. How difficult it is when they have to prefer Jesus and his values over their own community members. Are you ready to face the displeasure of your community members or their dislike and conflict with them or face opposition from them by not following their advice, which you in conscience think goes against Christ or his gospel values? Do you become a fence sitter in those situations, refusing to take any side? A fence sitter. The second condition put by Jesus to follow him by carrying the cross in verse 27 points to the renunciation of self-interest and our willingness to make sacrifices for the sake of the gospel. The cross symbolizes all the hardships, humiliation, rejection and sacrifices involved in following the Lord in a radical manner. When we decide to follow him radically by preferring him over blood relationship, the shadow of the cross follows us. We become objects of ridicule, criticism, opposition, etc. He wants that we should die to self-interest and allow God to be our greatest driving force. Next, through the two brief parables of the house builder and the warring king, Jesus explains that Christian discipleship is like building a tower and fighting a war, both of which need careful planning, preparation, sufficient resources and perseverance, as verses 28 to 32 mention. The same thing is true about a battle against all anti-kingdom forces. He asked his disciples not to follow him under a sudden impulse or emotion, but with a mature deliberation and calculation. We should have enough spiritual resources to walk till the end, till the way of the cross. A half-hearted Christian may become a laughing stock, like the foolish house builder who left the building half done due to his miscalculation of the actual cost. Another way of leaving the building of Christian life half complete is just avoiding evil but not doing any good to those from whom nothing is expected in return. Finally, what he means is, if one is not in a position to complete the journey of discipleship, it is better not to begin it at all. There is no room for half-hearted following. It is all or nothing. All or nothing. This gospel invites us to count the cost carefully before launching into married, ordained or religious states of life, or before assuming major leadership roles. Let us recall to mind the initial enthusiasm we had when we first got married or entered into religious life or joined an organization. It is possible that after facing trials and hardships, we have become cold and indifferent over the years. Jesus instructs us to sit down and calculate, that is, reflect whether we have sufficient resources, that is, psycho-spiritual energy, to persevere and complete our life's mission till the end. with a sense of fulfillment. Any half-heartedness in these matters makes us unacceptable to God and leads to betrayal of relationships and trust offers and the trust others have put in us, as well as consequent ridicule by the public. Prayer. Jesus, may my decision to follow you in my own state of life be deliberate, mature and much calculated. No matter what the cost is or how heavy the cross is, deliver me from all half-hearted and mediocre commitments. Amen.